another episode of Park to Park podcast, where we compare theme park offerings from coast to coast. We don't always see eye to eye, but in the end, we'll try. I'm your host, CJ, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Alli. Alli, how are you doing?
Hello, all you lovely people, including CJ. I am doing well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I am doing well. It's a gloomy day here in Orlando, but we're rolling with it.
Yep, the gloom has left Texas. It was gloomy. It rained for about 24 hours this week without stopping, so that was fun.
Yeah, we pretty much got the same this week too, so fun times. Well, thanks for joining us today. This episode, we are going to be comparing the two flagship parks of Walt Disney World and Disneyland Resort, which would be
The Magic Kingdom and Disneyland.
yes. Most people when they say we're going to Disney World, they picture a castle. Same thing with Disneyland, right? We picture the castle. These are the main parks on each coast. So we're going to be breaking down kind of, how many rides does each park have, how many attractions, how many shows, how many restaurants. Kind of just touching on every little aspect of the parks here. So let's start with our experiences at the parks. We've talked about our experiences at the resorts, but let's talk about our favorite things at each park. So Alli, what are your favorite things about Magic Kingdom and Disneyland?
So I think one of my favorite things about Magic Kingdom is the space. There's a lot of elbow room, a lot of room to spread out, and as attached to that is the accessibility. It's so much greater than it is at Disneyland. If you're in a wheelchair, you go through the main line. At Disneyland, honestly, I'm not even sure what you do. And actually it varies by ride. A lot of the newer
Yeah.
rides, like those in Galaxy's Edge, you can go through the standby line as normal, but a lot of the older rides, not so much. So Magic Kingdom, I like the space, the breathing room, and that it was designed with accessibility in mind.
That's a good point, and I don't think a lot of people realize that. Like, I'm picturing the Fantasyland rides in Disneyland, like that is really difficult to navigate if you're in a wheelchair. I'm not to say like the whole situation is difficult to navigate, but you don't use the main entrance for the line. You have to go to another area. And it's just, you're right, every ride has different rules, and that can be difficult to keep track of. But to their credit, Disney does do a really good job at providing accommodations for everybody.
Yeah, and it's not something you notice until you need it.
Yeah.
So
That's true. And then at Disneyland, what's your favorite thing about Disneyland?
So this was a tough question for me because Disneyland, it's comfortable, it's home, it's very, very familiar to me. So one thing I really like about Disneyland that Disney World doesn't really do is the holiday overlays. I mean, yeah, there's a tree that's in Magic Kingdom as well as Disneyland, and I love, love, love the Christmas tree. But you get the Nightmare Before Christmas at the Haunted Mansion. You get the Christmas overlay at It's a Small World, and that is just it's just the heart of the holidays for me. It's so exciting to go into the parks and just feel Christmas time there. And also, I really love the Matterhorn.
I kind of like the Matterhorn too, although it kind of hurts my back since they
Yes.
refurbished it a few years ago. But there's something about that. Like, I just love that it's from 1959 and it's the first like steel track roller coaster in the world, I think, is the stat on that. So for historic reasons, I agree with you on that one.
What about you?
Well, for Magic Kingdom, and you touched on the fact that there's a lot of open space, and like that's part of the experience. There's some grandness about Magic Kingdom that doesn't quite exist at Disneyland. Like the buildings on Main Street seem a little taller, the castle is obviously a lot taller. It's it's very grand, and it kind of is like, wow, this is amazing. Like when you, it's a visual eye candy that like Disneyland is still visual eye candy, but they just up it times 100 at Magic
Yeah.
Kingdom. There's something like eye-popping about it. And then there's some unique things at Magic Kingdom that cannot be found at Disneyland, like Hall of Presidents and Carousel of Progress. And those things go back to Walt Disney himself. Those were his ideas. And actually, Carousel of Progress is the only attraction at Walt Disney World that Walt touched, that Walt worked on, because it was
Interesting.
part of it was part of the World's Fair in 1964. Then they moved it to Disneyland and then Magic Kingdom. So for me, there's some history there that is really cool. And contrast that with Disneyland, where there is so much history. And that's one of the things I love about Disneyland. Like things that Walt worked on, I really appreciate. You can walk in and look up at Walt's apartment over the fire station and see his light in the window there. Like that's really cool. The historian in me just loves that. I also think that there's a certain type of ride that is more prevalent at Disneyland than at Magic Kingdom, and that's the dark ride. You know, like the
Hmm.
Fantasyland dark rides like Snow White, Pinocchio, Mr. Toad. Those seem to be kind of a dying breed at Magic Kingdom. A lot of those things in Fantasyland, like they've been replaced, right? Like Mr. Toad was replaced with Pooh, which is a dark ride. But like they have the Princess Meet and Greet over there. They've got PhilharMagic. They've got Seven Dwarfs Mine Train and Enchanted Tales with Belle. It's just different, and I like kind of the older stuff in Disneyland.
Oh, gee, the history teacher likes the historical stuff. I
I
never
know.
saw that coming.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Well,
Hey,
speaking
don't
of,
apologize for who you are.
thank you. I appreciate that. Well, speaking of history, let's talk about some stats about the park. So, Allie, when did Disneyland open?
July 17th, 1955. They celebrated 66 years this year.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And so just a few years from now, they'll be 70, which I'm sure they'll do a big celebration for.
I have to.
Yeah, they have to. And how big is Disneyland?
85 acres. And that's
And that's
just the
just
Disneyland theme park itself. That doesn't include California Adventure. It doesn't include Downtown Disney, any of the hotels, doesn't include the Esplanade. That is just the
right.
theme park.
Right. So on the flip side, Magic Kingdom opened October 1st, 1971. It just celebrated its 50th birthday earlier, well, about a month ago. And it's 105 acres, so only about 20 acres larger than Disneyland. And again, that's just Magic Kingdom Park. I was looking up some stats on how many people visited, and of course, 2020, we can throw that out the window. I think 2021, we can also throw out the window. So going back to 2019, Magic Kingdom had just under 21 million visitors. And how many did Disneyland have?
Yeah, so that was 18.7 million visitors. So just about 19 million visitors in the year 2019, which is the year before we had too many anomalies to make the data valid.
Yeah, so I'm I'm personally a little bit surprised that the number of visitors is about equal between these two parks, because I think Walt Disney World, we talked about it last episode, Walt Disney World is such a big vacation destination. So that surprises me a little bit.
Yeah, and you know what? I was one of those numbers for Disneyland in 2019, but I was not for Disney World in 2019. So for me personally, that's definitely odd because I went to the one with fewer visitors.
I went to both, so there you go. Let's talk about the arrival experience for Magic Kingdom and Disneyland because it's very, very different. If you're familiar with one, the other one is just going to seem so bizarre to you. So, Allie, let's talk about how you arrive at Disneyland.
So, if you're staying at one of the hotels on property hotels, you take a walk. If you're not staying at one of the on property hotels, if you're staying at an off property hotel, odds are you're going to take a walk or you're going to drive and then park in one of the parking lots / parking structures. So there's a couple. You have a couple of options. The Mickey and Friends structure is very close to the Pixar Pals structure. In the before times, as I call them, you could hop on the tram and then get dropped off at Downtown Disney, where you would take a short walk to the entrance plaza. Currently, the trams are not running as of time of recording. So you just take a walk from the parking structure. It's just under a mile, and you walk through Downtown Disney, and then you're at the entrance plaza. The other option for parking is the Toy Story parking lot, where you can walk about a mile to down Harbor Boulevard to get to the entrance plaza, or you can hop on a bus where you're dropped off and then you walk just a short distance to get to the entrance plaza. So either way, no matter what, you're walking. But you know what? You're going to a theme park, so what's an extra mile on top of all the walking you're doing in a theme park anyways?
Yeah. There's one more option you forgot to mention, but not a lot of people use it.
What's
I'll
that?
give you a I'll give you a hint. Tomorrowland above the submarines.
The monorail. Okay, so you
Yes.
can hop on the monorail in downtown Disney if you're going to Disneyland and ride the monorail, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're in Tomorrowland.
Yeah, and that's a really cool feature that Walt Disney World doesn't have. I mean, the monorail is much bigger at Walt Disney World, but to have the monorail drop you off in the park in the middle of the action, that's really cool. And it's like beneficial if you're staying at the Disneyland Hotel and you want to go straight to Space Mountain. Like you're just basically right there after
Yeah.
a very quick monorail ride. It's pretty cool. But the walk isn't that bad,
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
really not.
No, no. And it's nice walking through downtown Disney because there's the music and the shops and the restaurants. Like there's things to look at.
Yeah, there's plenty to distract you.
Yeah, yeah. So for Magic Kingdom, you have a ton of different options to get there. And I guess like if you're driving there and parking, it's a pain. I'll be honest, it's a pain. This is one of my least favorite parks to visit as a local because parking is oh, it's not fun. Basically, like Disneyland has parking structures, right? At Magic Kingdom and actually all of Walt Disney World, it's just flat lots. Disney Springs is the only exception to that. So think about like how hot it gets during the summer. Hot.
Mm,
Your car is roasting in the sun. And at Magic Kingdom, you don't just walk from the parking lot straight to the gates. You have to take transportation from, like, you walk to the ticket and transportation center. And from there, you can board a ferry that takes you across the lake. You can board the monorail, or there's buses, but not a lot of people use the buses. Um, so it takes time. And right now, they're not running the trams. So and I'm pushing a double stroller. It's a long walk, a long hot walk potentially. And then to have to wait for a monorail or wait for a ferry on top of that, like it's just there's no walking path from Ticket and Transportation Center to Magic Kingdom. So it's a I mean, it can take like 30 minutes to get from your car to the park.
wow.
Whereas at Disneyland, I feel like you could do it in 15 to 20.
Yeah.
you know. So if you're staying on property, it depends on where you're staying. If you're staying at the Contemporary or Grand Floridian, you can actually walk. There's a walking path. I hear there's a walking path from the Polynesian to the Grand Floridian, but I have not confirmed that. So theoretically, I guess you could walk from the Polynesian, but all those hotels, the Contemporary, Polynesian, and Grand Floridian, are all connected via monorail. So I mean, unless the monorail line is excessively long, I feel like it's probably better just to take the monorail. It's probably a faster walk. The Contemporary is a pretty short walk, though. If I was staying at the Contemporary, I just walk. Your other option, some resorts have boat transportation, like Fort Wilderness, Wilderness Lodge. You can take a boat straight there. Polynesian and Grand Floridian also sometimes offer boat access, not all the time. And then all of the other resorts on Disney property have dedicated buses to Magic Kingdom. And they'll drop you off at the bus drop off, which is very close to the park entrance. If you're staying
Mhm.
off property, you're either driving in, Uber or lifting in, or some of the off property hotels have their own shuttles, but they run, every 20 to 30 minutes or something like that. Some of them are on a schedule. So you have to watch your times like that. Um, but basically, the moral of the story is at Magic Kingdom, you're also walking, but the walk is not very pleasant because it's through a flat, hot parking lot with the Florida sun and humidity and potentially like tropical rainstorms raining down on you. It's not an easy walk.
So let's go ahead and talk about the lands and kind of the layout of both of these parks. For both, you go in and you're on Main Street, but they kind of differ a little bit from there. CJ, why don't you walk us through the Magic Kingdom?
Yeah, I feel like once you get to the hub, both parks have that central hub with the statue of Walt and Mickey and the castle and everything. And I feel like parts of the branching off from the hub are similar and parts are different. Like over to the right is Tomorrowland, right? Behind the castle
Mhm.
is Fantasyland. Off to the left, you have Adventureland and Frontierland. There's a land at Magic Kingdom, Liberty Square, that doesn't exist at Disneyland, and that's between Fantasyland and Frontierland. And then Frontierland and Adventureland, they parallel each other and then run dead into each other at the end. So it's a little bit different, but that hub layout is pretty familiar if you're familiar with it at Disneyland.
Yeah, and then Disneyland, like you said, it's got Tomorrowland to the right. Straight ahead is Fantasyland, and if you keep going beyond Fantasyland, you'll find Toontown. Left side, you have Frontierland, Adventureland, and going beyond those, you'll find New Orleans Square and Critter Country. And then the other thing that Disneyland has is Galaxy's Edge is there, all the Star Wars stuff. And that's if you're standing in the hub at the statue of Walt and Mickey, and you think of it as there's a clock, Main Street behind you is 6 o'clock. Galaxy's Edge is over at 11 o'clock or so. And you get there by walking. You can either get through Critter Country, or there's a path that goes from Frontierland to Fantasyland, and there's an entrance to Galaxy's Edge on the Frontierland side of that path.
Yeah, I always, it's funny, Hollywood Studios has Galaxy's Edge, but I always get confused because I spent so much time in Disneyland's version. There's only 2 entrances to Galaxy's Edge in Hollywood Studios, but 3 at Disneyland. So when I'm there, like, my mind gets a little like twisted, like, why isn't there an exit here? Why is that gate closed? There's something else I wanted to mention, Critter Country. That's not at Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, that's true. So some of the elements that were previously or are currently in Critter Country exist in Magic Kingdom, but just in different lands. So Disneyland used to have the Country Bear Jamboree in Critter Country. Doesn't exist anymore, but Magic Kingdom still has that, and that's where Splash Mountain is as well.
And Winnie the Pooh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Toontown. There's no Toontown at Magic Kingdom.
Yeah. Where does Mickey live?
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of like hardcore long-term Walt Disney World fans mourn the loss of Mickey's Toontown, right? They wish that it existed somewhere in Walt Disney World, but basically Toontown in Magic Kingdom was demolished and they expanded Fantasyland. So Fantasyland is kind of divided into new Fantasyland and then current like normal Fantasyland. I don't want to call it old Fantasyland. And then there's Storybook Circus area, which is like a sub-land of Fantasyland. So the layout's a little funky. Fantasyland is huge at Magic Kingdom, and yet Disneyland, I think, manages to fit more attractions into Fantasyland.
Yeah. So speaking of attractions, how many attractions are there at Magic Kingdom?
So I went to Disney's website this time. I didn't go to Wikipedia. And I counted. So when you look up attractions on Disney's website, it includes rides, shows, like things that aren't necessarily rides are also counted as attractions. So based on that criteria, there's 39 according to Disney's website at Magic Kingdom.
And that's a lower number than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because remember, it's 105 acres, right? So yeah. 39 attractions, 105 acres. What about Disneyland?
So I did not do my homework, and I stuck to Wikipedia.
That's fine.
So we mentioned this last week. There are 53 attractions approximately at Disneyland.
Yeah, that's a lot for 85 acres.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some that are unique to each park and some that are close. Like there's very close equivalents, and then some are exactly the same.
Yeah. There's some that are identical.
So in looking at the attractions list for Magic Kingdom, I was looking at how many, like I was going through the list and I was tallying how many attractions are unique to Magic Kingdom, like don't really exist at Disneyland. And I counted 11 plus the Jungle Cruise overlay for the holidays called Jingle Cruise, which Disneyland used to have, but they don't do anymore. Womp, womp, womp. Yeah. Yeah. So what about Disneyland? How many unique attractions does Disneyland have that Magic Kingdom does not have?
There's more than 20.
Yeah.
There's a lot of differences, and I think that just goes to emphasize that there are a lot of differences between Disneyland and Magic Kingdom. Like, yeah, you can go on the same ride at both of them, but you're going to have a totally different experience because there are so many rides that are different and unique between the two parks.
Yeah, and I was looking at attractions that are exactly the same. There's only about 5. And that would be Dumbo, right? A basic outdoor spinning elephant ride. Mad Tea Party, where the only difference is one's covered one's not. And at the Magic Kingdom version, the little dormouse pops up in the middle.
Oh.
The carousel, which is pretty much the same.
Mhm.
Number 4, the Little Mermaid. And number 5, the Frontierland Shootin' Arcade.
And just a minor technicality, Little Mermaid attraction is technically in Disney California Adventure.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
yeah.
And then there's some that have like equivalents that are almost the same, but not quite. Let's talk about some of those.
Yeah, so the first on our list is the Tiki Room. And,
Yes.
I'll be honest, I have not been to the Tiki Room at Magic Kingdom since, I don't know, probably 2000. So I'm not really sure what those differences are.
It's a really close difference. It's not exactly the same. Tiki Room in Magic Kingdom is a little bit shorter. They cut part of the song.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah. I know it is because it's such a sweet show. Like why would you cut it? So what are some of the other attractions that are close?
So Disneyland has Autopia, where Magic Kingdom has the Speedway.
Yeah.
And it's basically the same. You pop in the cars, you drive around the track, you do not bump the car in front of you.
Correct. And like the difference there is the track layout and the theming. The Tomorrowland Speedway is going on like Florida's, I think about like Florida's like Daytona 500 race, right? It's like a speedway. Like that's the theme, right? And Autopia is like it's just I don't it's sponsored by Honda, first of all. So there's like the Honda Asimo robot who's hanging around in different scenes on Autopia with his little bird friend, and there's kind of a story to the ride.
I feel like it's a drive through the park of tomorrow.
That's a good way of putting it. I like that. And it feels like a park. They've got the
Yeah.
trees overhead. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
And then there's Tom Sawyer's Island. And at Disneyland, it's been changed to Pirate's Lair on Tom Sawyer Island.
Mhm.
So it's got some piratey stuff going on.
Yeah, just different theming, same concept. It used to be Tom Sawyer Island, but it's just now it's got a little bit of facelift.
Yeah, and they actually cut part of the island down when they built Galaxy's Edge because they had to reroute the rivers of America a little bit to
Okay.
accommodate the new land. So, yeah, it's changed recently too. And then what else do we have?
The Winnie the Pooh ride, which again, it's been quite some time since I've been on that. So I know the cars are slightly different.
Yeah, there's 3 rows of seating at Disneyland versus 2 at Magic Kingdom. And then I feel like the Winnie the Pooh in Magic Kingdom, it's a lot more bumpy. Like, they kind of like roll a little bit to
Oh, yeah,
be
yeah,
like
yeah,
Tigger.
that's right.
Yeah. Yeah, the one in Magic Kingdom is like kind of violent compared to the Disneyland. The Disneyland one's like a smooth, rollicky thing.
Yeah.
And then there's Haunted Mansion.
Yeah, Haunted Mansion at Magic Kingdom has some extra rooms that you won't see at Disneyland.
Yes, yes. And for me,
And
we'll talk about it in further detail later, but for me, it's very close as to which one's better.
yeah, and the other thing with Haunted Mansion is when you go into Disneyland, is this haunted room actually stretching? Well, you're in an elevator, but at
Yeah.
Magic Kingdom, no, the room is just stretching.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we've got some of the mountain rides, Splash Mountain and Space Mountain and Big Thunder.
So we talked a little bit about this before, but Space Mountain in Magic Kingdom, there's 2 tracks for it. So it's
Yeah.
completely different ride. But I think the buildings look the same, and obviously it's
Yeah.
the same theme, space exploration and shooting off in a rocket with all stars.
Right.
Big Thunder is, I think it's again same thing, Wild West Frontier. It's just,
Hmm.
different track basically.
Yeah, the track layout is flipped. So at Disneyland where you go right and Magic Kingdom you go left and vice versa. And there's a couple like show scenes that are a little bit different at Magic Kingdom version. And Big Thunder at Disneyland had that upgrade 5 or 6 years ago with like explosions at the
Mhm.
end. Yeah. And then Splash Mountain, the log is different. First of all, there's two to a row
Mhm.
in Magic Kingdom, and then at Disneyland, it's like the Space Mountain at Magic Kingdom, where it's just one person per seat.
Except in the very back row. You can sit
Yeah,
an adult with a very small child in the back row at Splash Mountain. You cannot sit 2 adults because that would be a really tight squeeze, but you can sit an adult with a very small child in the back row.
yep. And then Pirates is pretty similar. The queue is a lot different at each one.
Yeah, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Peter Pan is similar. Jungle Cruise is similar. Buzz Lightyear is similar. Liberty Square Riverboat and Mark Twain are basically the same thing, just different
Yeah.
names. And then Astro Orbiter, really the difference is one is high up, one is on the ground. Then we've got the Main Street vehicles, which don't always operate at either park, right? It depends how crowded it is and
Yeah.
weather and stuff. And then small,
Generally, the earlier in the day you go, the more likely it is for the Main Street vehicles to
yes,
be operating. Basically, once there's a parade, they're kind of out of commission.
right, yeah, yeah. And then there's Small World, which is also similar, but one is far superior compared to the other one. I
CJ
think we'll
has
get to that in a
opinions
future.
on this with a
I
capital O.
do. I do. I think we'll get to, in a few, probably next season, we'll break down into like really in depth what is the difference between Haunted Mansion at both part. What about Pirates, Small World? We'll really get into it in the next season.
We might have to do some in-person research on this because I'm not really sure that I can adequately report on this right now.
That's fine. And then there are some attractions at Disneyland that are not in Magic Kingdom, but they exist elsewhere at Walt Disney World. What are those?
Yeah, if it's a Star Wars attraction, it's identical in Hollywood Studios
Hmm.
compared to Disneyland. So we've got the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, Rise of the Resistance, Star Wars Launch Bay, and Star Tours.
Yes, and at Disneyland, Star Tours and Launch Bay are in Tomorrowland, and then the other two are in Galaxy's Edge, of course, which is by
Mhm.
Frontierland. And some of the unique rides, that Disneyland has, some of the unique attractions. Like to me, the big difference is Fantasyland and Toontown.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot more dark rides in Fantasyland and Disneyland, and then the existence of Toontown just in
Yeah,
itself.
because there's things there that count as attractions that you wouldn't think are attractions, like
Right.
Mickey's house and Minnie's house, Goofy's Playhouse, Donald's boat. And then there's another great dark ride back there, Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin. And Roger Rabbit really doesn't have any representation in Magic Kingdom at all.
Right.
You can see some Easter eggs at Hollywood Studios, and that's about it. And then we've got Indiana Jones, which is a great attraction, um, but it has a similar attraction in Animal Kingdom at Dinosaur.
Yeah, both of them are the four in a row in a Jeep, and you go through, and it's a high-speed, turbulent ride in the dark with sudden
Yes.
drops and stops. No, that's Space Mountain. Just kidding.
Yeah, and actually the track for Indiana Jones and Dinosaur is exactly the same.
Oh, really?
Yep, yep. So sometimes when I'm writing Dinosaur, I go through and I'm thinking, oh, this is where Harrison Ford is doing whatever he does in Indiana
So,
Jones.
so in Indiana Jones, actually, I'm not going to ask that question because it kind of ruins the magic of the ball area. So never
Okay.
mind.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Okay, so some of the unique attractions at Magic Kingdom, Allie, what are some of the unique attractions you're seeing up there?
So the Country Bear Jamboree, which, as we mentioned, that used to be at Disneyland, and it got replaced by Winnie the Pooh. Though, if you know where to look, there's an Easter egg in the Winnie the Pooh ride.
Three
Um,
Easter eggs, as a matter of fact.
yeah, to be exact, there's three of them. They're all in the same place. If you know,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah.
The Magic Carpets of Aladdin, which is just kind of a Dumbo copycat. The Carousel of Progress that we talked about before, which is one of your favorites.
Hmm.
Um, and Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, that's a coaster that doesn't
Yeah.
exist at Disneyland. And personally, I'm not a big fan of it, but it's
Really?
very popular. Yeah, I don't like the swaying back and forth
Okay, okay, I can see that. I can see that. I think that's the newest coaster in all of Walt Disney World, actually.
for now.
Yeah, that's true. Tron is coming soon, and that will be a unique attraction for any of the US parks. It'll be the only
Yeah,
one. Yeah, I'm really excited for that.
me too.
Um, yeah, and then there's this Splash and Soak station, Casey Jr. Splash and Soak station. Disneyland does not have any Splash and Soak stations.
I mean, there's that rotating ball in Tomorrowland that has water all over it, but that's the closest thing, probably.
Yeah, it's not like spraying water at people or anything,
Yeah.
but I've been walking by the Splash and Soak at Magic Kingdom, and kids are like head to toe soaked. There's nothing like that at Disneyland. I'd be worried what happened to you if I saw you walking around like that at Disneyland.
Too many Splash Mountain too many times in a row.
Yeah, or maybe you like jumped into the pirates' water or something. I don't know.
I think you'd get kicked out. You'd be escorted by security at that point.
Probably. That's why I'd be worried. All right, well, let's talk about shows at the parks. So Allie, what kind of shows does Disneyland have?
So I counted 6 shows at Disneyland. The Dapper Dans on Main Street, which if just stop and listen to them.
Hmm.
Those guys can harmonize, man. They're
Hmm.
really good at what they do. Um, Anyways, you can also see Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln, and there's also a little, pre-show for that in the lobby where you can learn about the history of Disneyland.
Hmm.
There's the fireworks show with Mickey's Mix Magic along with that, which is the projection mapping, and they do that on It's a Small World facade as well as Sleeping Beauty's castle. You have storytelling at the Royal Theater, which you'll either get a Tangled show or a Beauty and the Beast show. And of course, the Tiki 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 Room.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the shows, unfortunately, have been cut right now because of, the big 2020 event that happened. There used to
Right.
be there used to be Mickey and the Magical Map over by Small World in this huge theater. I think there was a band called like the Bootstrappers in New Orleans Square area.
Yeah. Pirate
Yep.
Band.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure I've seen jazz bands over in New Orleans Square as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of things unfortunately have disappeared, and it's a similar story at Magic Kingdom. But for now, I counted 5 shows, which are also classified as attractions. Plus, they've also got the Dapper Dans. Their fireworks show came back over the summer, and they just premiered a new one called Enchantment. And then one thing that Magic Kingdom has that Disneyland doesn't is an opening show, a welcome show for the park called Let the Magic Begin. And I think Disneyland's really missing that because rope drop, they just like literally drop the rope and then the park's open, right? And they
Yeah.
remind you to walk, not run.
Yeah.
And
Please
that's
don't run
it.
in a Disney park.
Yeah, no. Whereas at Magic Kingdom, it's like this big thing with like fireworks at the castle. Not a lot of fireworks, but a couple of them, and some characters come out. So,
I don't think I've ever seen that. I think most of my Magic Kingdom mornings, I've either come too late after the park opens or
mm,
I came in too soon before the park opened when I had my 7:30 in the morning reservation at Cinderella Royal Table.
okay, so you missed it. Yeah. Okay, so they used to hold you at the train station and they would do the opening show at the train station. So you could not pass the tunnels to get on Main Street. And you can imagine how crowded that might be because Disneyland and Magic Kingdom have a very similar space between the entry turnstiles and the train station. So they moved it to be a castle show and then the parks closed and they didn't bring back the welcome show and it just made its comeback for the 50th on October 1st. So it's cute. It's like a little 5 to 10 minute thing. I think it's worth seeing once, but I'd rather go wait for a ride personally. But if it's like a once in a lifetime thing, it's a cool way to start your day.
Yeah.
So some other stats here. How many rides, not attractions, how many rides, things that move does Disneyland have?
All right, so this time I did do my homework and I did count on the Disneyland website. So included in this count, I included some rides that are closed for refurbishment at the time of recording and closed for other reasons. And I also included the Main Street vehicles, even though they do not always operate. So the total that I got for Disneyland was 35.
Okay, and then at Magic Kingdom, we have 21 or 22, depending on if you count Carousel of Progress as a ride. Because it's a show, but the theater rotates, so you're technically moving, but some people don't say it's a ride. So, and that also includes Main Street vehicles. So, I mean, Disneyland clearly has more rides. I think we've
Yeah,
established that.
yeah.
Let's talk about my next favorite thing besides rides, which is dining.
Food, feed
Yes.
me.
How many restaurants does Disneyland have?
So just to clarify on restaurants, we are not counting the churro carts, the ice cream carts, the turkey leg carts. Nothing that's on wheels counts for this. Um, And it also does not include Club 33, which is highly exclusive. If you get in, it will be one of the best meals of your life, but it will also be one of the most expensive. So this is quick service, counter service, and table service. There are 34 places to eat at Disneyland.
And Magic Kingdom, same rules here. No carts on wheels, no Club 33, 31. So Disneyland actually has more.
The numbers are in Disneyland's favor for this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think with the dining, I think again the extra land of Toontown is making a difference here.
Yeah, for sure.
Critter Country. Because when I was looking at the list, in Toontown, it had like Daisy's Diner, Clarabelle's, something other. Those are all counter service restaurant, and there's like 2 or 3 of them right there in a row.
Yeah.
And that really ups the total. Now, what about meet and greets? And I know meet and greets are kind of weird right now because of the times that we're in. So let's talk about meet and greets at both parks.
Yeah, so there's a lot that are closed because of everything that happened in 2020. So you could previously go meet Tinkerbell and her friends in Pixie Hollow. You can meet all the princesses at the Princess Fantasy Fair, and you could go to Toontown and go to Mickey and Minnie's houses and meet them in their house. Which that's so cool. There's a picture of us on the couch in Mickey's house from, the mid 90s. We were adorable.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool way to meet the characters because you're walking through their houses and they're highly detailed and it doesn't really feel like you're waiting in a line.
Yeah, there's stuff for kids to play with. You can pick up the phone. You can play with the oven in Minnie's house, and there's all sorts of things to do in there.
And there's so many Easter eggs too.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of things that are not closed, there is, if you are a Disney Visa card holder, there's a Star Wars meet and greet that you can do. And there's also, for everybody, there's places where you can see the characters from a distance and wave to them and take a selfie where they're in the background and you're in the foreground because you can't get right up next to them the way you used to be able to.
Yeah, and Magic Kingdom has that as well. Above Country Bear Jamboree, you'll see some of the country bears out there. Above the train station, sometimes in other places, and it's that like selfie kind of thing. But at Magic Kingdom, there is a princess meet and greet as well. Mickey and Tinkerbell, you can meet in the theater on Main Street, so that's a little different. One of my favorites is Enchanted Tales with Belle. Have you ever done that before?
If I did, I was like 8 years old.
I don't think it was around when we did our trip in 2000.
Then
no. So basically, this is over by Be Our Guest, and you walk through like Belle's cottage, and it's kind of like an interactive show because they pull people from the audience to like play a knight in armor or something, and then you meet Belle.
That's cute.
Yeah, it is really cute. I've only done it once or twice. It's currently closed, but it's pretty cool. And actually, traditional meet and greets, even though they're not back yet, they're taking a step in that direction. They've reopened Mickey's meet and greet on Main Street and the Princess one in Fantasyland. You can't get, there's a rope, so you can't get that close to them. They're now called sightings. So it's an actual attraction instead of like maybe you'll catch them just on a cavalcade that rolls by. So you can go walk through and see Mickey and see the princesses, take a selfie, and walk out.
What are they, Bigfoot? It's like Mickey Mouse sighting.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. That's so weird. Sighting didn't sound right to me, but you're right. It sounds like
it's a cryptid.
Random. Yeah. Yeah. That's very strange.
Right.
Let's talk about
good choice of words, Disney, but yeah, you're right. Let's move on.
Let's talk about parades and nighttime entertainment. What's going on with that at Disneyland?
So currently there aren't really any parades at time of recording. The Christmas parade is set to start on November 12th, which should be after this episode is released. There will be the Christmas parade happening. There are character cavalcades happening that may be phased out for the holiday season. And then, as we mentioned before, there's the fireworks and you've got the Mickey's Mixed Magic projection mapping show.
Yeah, and then during normal times, we've got Fantasmic as well in New Orleans Square, but I haven't heard anything about that coming back anytime
Yeah,
soon,
me either.
unfortunately. What's really cool about the fireworks is they do projections down Main Street on the castle and at Small World at the facade. So for our listeners who are more Walt Disney World people, like Small World's inside at completely inside of Magic Kingdom, but at Disneyland, you board the ride outside and the facade is all outside. Um, and they've got really this nice blank space to work with to do some projection mapping, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah, they do a really great job with the projection mapping, especially on It's a Small World. And I know they do that at Magic Kingdom too, primarily on the castle, I believe.
Mhm.
And, the Sleeping Beauty capsule at Disneyland, it's a smaller canvas to work with. But I think adding It's a Small World, for one, it gives you a second area that you can go look at that, you can decide which one you want to go stop by. And for two, it's a bigger space. It's a bigger canvas than, the castle is.
Yeah, and they've done some stuff with the Matterhorn for fireworks too occasionally.
Oh, that's so
Um,
cool.
yeah, do you remember the 60th show where they did the Finding Nemo segment in the fireworks?
Oh, it's coming back to me. It's been a while, but it's coming back to me.
Yeah, I don't remember the line, but it's like the ring of fire, and then they made the Matterhorn look like a volcano with like orange.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Shark bait. Hoo-ha-ha.
Yeah, so they've got a lot of canvases to work with at Disneyland,
Yeah.
which is really cool. And I like that you can watch the fireworks show from Main Street by the castle. You can go behind the castle. You won't see projections behind the castle, but you can get really close to the fireworks. And then you can watch over by Small World and get the projections too.
Mhm.
And that's, in my opinion, another way that Disneyland makes good use of their space.
Yeah, for sure. Because the fireworks go off from the Toontown area, so and the entrance to Toontown is right next to It's a Small World.
Mhm.
So if you're watching them from Small World, you're really close.
Yeah, and I personally like watching the fireworks better there because you got the Toontown fireworks like right in front of you, and then behind you you've got the castle fireworks going off, and then you've got the
Mhm.
projections right in front. You're like you're spending your time in the show like looking all around you because there's so much stuff going on.
Yeah, there's so much to see.
Yeah. So at Magic Kingdom, they do have a fireworks show as well. Disney Enchantment. It just premiered on October 1st. I have not seen it yet. I'm not willing to brave the crowds probably until January. So
I don't blame you.
yeah, it might be a while. But they also do the projection mapping down Main Street and on the castle. And then they have the dessert parties, which is really cool. They have character cavalcades as well to see the characters. And then they do something called the Kiss Goodnight. Do you know what that is?
Oh, I did at one point. If you'd asked me 2 years ago, I probably would have said, yes, I do.
It's like the castle telling you goodnight, basically. It's a little quick show at closing or shortly after closing. It's been a long time since I've seen it, so I'm not 100% sure if they still do it. But it's a nice, like, closing touch to end the night. So now that we've got the facts laid out, it's time for the final showdown. Can we see eye to eye? Does one side stand out above the crowd? So, Allie, tell me your thoughts. Disneyland versus Magic Kingdom. Let's go.
So this is a really hard decision, as I think all of these will be. And I am trying to not let my personal bias towards Disneyland get in the way of my decision here. That said, looking at all of the numbers, I am going to have to give this one to Disneyland. There's a lot more to do. There's a lot more choices in places to eat. There's more choices for where you see the fireworks from. Yeah, there's more restrictions at the moment, but overall, there's just more at Disneyland. So I'm going to have to give it to Disneyland for this one.
Yeah, Allie, we see eye to eye on this one for sure. And I echo your sentiment where it's really hard not to let like my personal bias towards Disneyland interfere with this. But if you just look at the numbers, I'm right there with you. There's more attractions, more rides, more restaurants, more to do. Um, and I was thinking about this like it's hard for me to get everything done in Disneyland in a day because there's so much to do. Whereas at
Mm-hmm.
Magic Kingdom, it's hard to get everything done in a day because there's so many people and not a lot of attractions for them to go to, so the lines get longer. Um, Disneyland, though, we didn't really talk about this too much. I feel like the lines at Disneyland are more manageable, especially as an adult, because there's more single rider options. Magic Kingdom doesn't have that. Like I can do single rider on like 5 different things at Disneyland.
Yeah,
And then I'll acknowledge there's some things that are better at Magic Kingdom. I think,
absolutely.
yeah, there's some really good themed dining options at Magic Kingdom, like Be Our Guest, Skipper Canteen, Cinderella Castle. Those are very highly immersive things, but I still think Disneyland takes the cake based on the sheer amount of things to do.
Yeah, and I'm gonna throw another point in Magic Kingdom's favor is echoing what I said at the beginning with accessibility and navigating in a wheelchair is 10 times easier at Magic Kingdom than it is at Disneyland. So props to Magic Kingdom for that, but I think overall I'm gonna go with Disneyland on this one. But no matter where you choose to have your Disney vacation, you are going to have a wonderful and magical experience.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Like you really can't make a wrong decision. But in the lineup of
Yeah.
Disneyland versus Magic Kingdom, if I could only go to one and I had to pick between those two, it would be Disneyland.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us as we discussed the showdown of Disneyland versus Magic Kingdom. And I want to know what you guys think. We want to know what you think. Do you think
Mhm.
Disneyland's better, Magic Kingdom's better, or are you split? Find us on Instagram and Twitter at Park2Park Pod. That's Park2Park Pod with the number 2. Email us with any questions, feedback, future episodes, ideas, anything really that you want to say at Park2ParkPod@gmail.com. That's with the number 2. And we might read some listener mail in a future episode. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone. And be sure to come back for our next episode where we're going to do a very similar thing. We're going to talk about Disney California Adventure Park versus Disney's Hollywood Studios. Now, these two parks aren't exactly the same. They aren't equivalent like Disneyland and Magic Kingdom are, but they do have a lot of similarities. So be sure to come back to hear what those similarities are.
Yes, I'm excited for that discussion. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.